Welcome to Heroes Behind the Badge, the podcast that brings you the real stories of America's law enforcement professionals. Today, we're diving into one of the most critical issues facing law enforcement and public safety, the disconnect between what crime statistics tell us and what Americans are actually experiencing on the streets. Our guest is Lynn Sipes, a nationally recognized crime data expert with 5 decades in the criminal justice system. Lynn has served as a police officer, federal spokesperson, and award-winning public relations expert. He's traveled the country teaching law enforcement agencies how to control their message and get the truth out about what they do. What Lynn has discovered about crime statistics will shock you. While politicians and media outlets point to declining reported crime rates, there's another set of data that tells a very different story, one that explains why Americans feel less safe than ever. This is part 1 of our conversation about the hidden truth behind America's crime statistics. Let's begin.
You know, we're big into the defund-the-police movement, screwed up our nation, crime skyrocketed. Now we're refunding the police and, giving them the resources they need to do their job, more cops, et cetera. Is there data, or are you, your expertise, are you consistent with that message that we're seeing an uptick in police funding and more officers, and thus we're seeing now data showing crime going down? Is there good data to support that premise?
When it comes to data, it's always yes, no, and maybe so. There is a little bit of evidence indicating that police hiring is stabilizing. I did an article a couple months ago per the Bureau of Labor Statistics saying that we were 25,000 cops, actually police employees, down. And, so we've lost tens of thousands of police officers in the process. I'm getting reports from all over the country as to cities not responding to property crimes, taking a long time for police to show up at violent crime incidents. We still are hundreds and hundreds of police officers down. And in some cases, some cities, close to 1,000 police officers down. So where there are indications per data from the Department of Justice that you take a look at correctional statistics, and we're now seeing more people being placed in jail. Correctional numbers are starting to reverse a long-term decline. So there's obviously more activity going on now, and I think the system and the country has taken a bit of a turn, but it's still not where we need to be.
Okay, good.
Okay.
That's what we thought.
I was looking, Len, at your bio, and I guess my question to you is: there anything you haven't done? You have certainly been, ex-police officer.
Yep.
You're an author. You're a podcaster.
Yep.
You were in the federal system. You're a retired federal senior spokesperson. I like that.
Yep.
And most important, you are recognized nationally as a crime data, and you're a crime data expert, and an award-winning public and media relations expert. I love it.
We traveled the country when I first did a podcast. Traveled the country teaching principally law enforcement agencies, but any government agency, how to do podcasts, how to do television shows, how to do radio shows, how to put them on the internet. We won a slew of awards for that. What I've been preaching to law enforcement agencies is that you now get to control your own message. And you really do need to take that very seriously in terms of getting the word out about what law enforcement does. I'm sick and tired of seeing law enforcement being kicked to the can. I really am tired of it. The defund-the-police movement was a pivotal issue for me. I have a lot of progressive friends. You can't be in government without encountering a slew of progressives. And, there was a certain tolerance. I just wrote an article basically saying just that when it came to the defund the police movement, everything pretty much changed for me. I knew what was going to happen. I knew we were going to lose thousands of police officers. I've spoken directly to a lot of cops who basically said, that's it, I'm done. If you're going to expect me to go out and risk my life for your benefit and call me, make me out to be less than a human, I'm done. Sorry, I can go someplace else and make more money.
As you know, Citizens Behind the Badge, which is the sponsor of this podcast, Heroes Behind the Badge, that is our main goal, is to fight this defame and defund the police movement, because we recognized 5 years ago, Craig Floyd called Bill Urfurth and I and said, hey, we have got to do something. And Craig, of course, having the credentials as the CEO emeritus of the Law Enforcement Memorial and the museum, he had the idea, and we joined him. And 5 years later, looks like maybe we're making a little dent, but
we're making a little dent. We're making a little dent. We're not back to where we need to be. And I'm just not sure that the average police officer out there is not sometimes reconsidering what it is that they want to do. When I was a cop myself, there were plenty of instances where I said to myself, one little move on my part in a very difficult situation could end up with me on the front page of newspapers throughout the country.
For sure.
That it's impossible to go through years of law enforcement without making a mistake or coming close to making a mistake. Society needs to understand that. Society needs to. The overwhelming majority of the cops that I've worked with, and I, continue to work with police officers throughout my career and law enforcement agencies throughout my career. It is a difficult job, to say the least, and it is almost impossible not to make mistakes. It is almost impossible.
For sure.
And people need to understand that. I think the overwhelming majority of cops are good, decent human beings who simply want to go home after their shifts to their wives and children. That's all they want to do. They're not out there to create problems. They're not out there to harm anybody. All you have to do is go along to get along. It really is just that simple.
Well, and again, that's our philosophy. And Craig has fought hard, as you know, for most of his adult life in support of police. But today, I think we want to focus in on I know this bothers all of us. Craig, myself, Bill Urfurth, we are bothered by this, I don't know, maybe it's a mix-up or something. It seems that when you read the headlines or listen to the media, the crime stats are down. And
they are down. Reported crime stats are down.
But yet, the public, from what I can see, is more fearful than ever of crime. Yes. How, Ben, you are an expert in this. How can that be?
Well, look, first of all, the average citizen does not, and everybody I'm talking to right now, they understand this. The average citizen does not pay attention to crime statistics. The average person, what they see, taste, smell, feel, touch, that's what guides them in terms of whether or not they have a fear or concern about crime. Right. Fear of crime per Gallup is at record levels, and there's multiple other pieces of research that basically says the same thing. Now, I was on a forum the other day talking about this, and so a young lady basically said people who don't get the fact that crime is down are stupid. Huh. They're stupid for how they feel. I can't imagine anything more insulting. But I've read dozens of articles from national publications who have essentially made the same statement. Now, they may not say stupid. They may use another more politically correct description, but, you have major media out there saying, why the hell can't people understand that crime is down and their lives are now safer? You have people out there basically saying we've never lived during safer times. I think that's pure malarkey. I'm not going to be in a position to criticize the average American in terms of how they feel. That bothers me deeply. The other part of it is the National Crime Victimization Survey, which is 50 years old. Nobody seems to know what the National Crime Survey is.
In fact, when I was doing my homework, that came up, and I've been around law enforcement my whole life. I've supported law enforcement. My daughter's in law enforcement. I've never heard of that before, and I'll bet you 99.9% of Americans have never heard of that. Could you explain that to us and why that makes a difference?
So I became, decades ago, the senior specialist for crime prevention and crime statistics for the Department of Justice's clearinghouse. And when I walked in, I sat down with people from the Bureau of Justice Statistics and say, would you please explain to me what the hell the National Crime Survey is?
Yeah, what is that?
Yeah. So in any event, it is a 50-year-old survey. The United States Department of Census said it is the principal source of crime statistics for the United States. It surveys people 12 and over in a panel design every 6 months, and it asks them very action-oriented questions. It doesn't say, have you been robbed? They ask, has somebody taken something from you through force or threat of force? Right. They use very action-oriented words. So there's no doubt that the National Crime Victimization Survey is far more accurate than the FBI crime statistics. Far more accurate.
That's interesting.
When you have 38%, which is recent U.S. Department of Justice data, 38%, we're talking about cities now, 38% of violent crimes being reported to law enforcement in urban areas, the overwhelming majority of what it is that people are getting in terms of reported crime statistics is a huge undercount. So to make a long story short, we've just had a 44% increase in rates of violent crime through the National Crime Victimization Survey for the last two major reporting periods.
Did you say 44%?
44%. It is the highest. I've been studying crime statistics for decades, and it is the highest increase in violent crime that I've ever encountered.
Wow.
Undoubtedly, 44%.
It's part one of our eye-opening conversation with crime data Lynn Sipes. As you've heard, there's a massive gap between the crime statistics politicians use and what's actually happening in America's communities. Next, in part two, we'll explore how this statistical manipulation affects real policy decisions, why the media isn't telling the whole story, and what it means for the future of law enforcement in America. You can find more of Len's research and analysis at crimeinamerica.net. His work is essential reading for anyone who wants to understand what's really happening with crime in our country. If you believe in supporting our nation's law enforcement officers, visit us at citizensbehindthebadge.org to sign our declaration of support. Follow us on social media and share this episode. The truth about crime statistics needs to be heard. Remember, our law enforcement officers are doing their jobs with fewer resources and less support than ever. They deserve the truth to be told about the challenges they face and the critical role they play in keeping our communities safe. Join us next for part two of our conversation with Lynn about the hidden truth behind America's crime crisis.